Because it doesn't matter what is written on any piece of paper. It doesn't matter what the squiggly lines say. What matters is natural law. What matters is the protection of the population and the preservation of the rights of the population and the preservation of peace. And this is something that we are not seeing. And if laws have been put in place that deviate from these objectives, then we need to dismantle those laws and we need to find out which criminals enacted them. Because as I said, we need to get real about it, folks, and the reality is that all that actually exists is natural law. The rest of it is fiction. I mean, of course, you can't really blame these police officers for doing what they do because they're completely brainwashed. And I call them criminals all the time, but I call them criminals because what they are doing is basically criminal activity. But more than really being criminals, they're just stupid folks. I mean, these people are completely brainwashed and their brains simply don't work. I mean, let's face it, anyone that would behave in this manner against members of the public, especially elderly people, these people have dysfunctional brains, folks. They have mental disorders, and so you can't really blame them for what they're doing. You sort of have to feel sorry for them more than anything. I'd like to see groups of people just surrounding these situations and simply stepping in and intervening and not allowing the police to carry out their activities. But again, I don't wish to see any violence carried out against the police officers. You just need to come between these criminal brainwashed thugs and their prey, so to speak. Because they are literally preying on these people, folks, and it's all about energy harvesting. The most disgusting thing in the whole situation in Canada, of course, was that there was actually a woman involved. There was this brain-dead woman police officer who was obviously reveling in her job of terrorizing an old man. And I guess she's got some weird sexual hang-ups or something like that, but you've got to feel sorry for these people, folks. I mean, what it would take, imagine the brain state you'd have to be in to actually go and inflict yourself upon people like that and to actually be able to justify it within yourselves. Of course, you've got all your group of thuggish peers around you that all tell you you're doing the right thing because these people sort of prop each other up morally because none of them actually seem to have any morals. So there's kind of this club thing going on, you know, whoever's in the club is okay. But you really have to wonder about the mentality of these type of people and what sort of woman it would take to be so far off the track and to want to do this to someone. It literally defies analysis, folks. These people obviously suffer from some of the most significant mental problems that we see anywhere within our society. And this certainly isn't an isolated incident, folks. In fact, just yesterday, I received a message from a friend who is talking about a friend of his who just got shot at a couple of days ago by a bail bondsman in Vegas. And of course, the gentleman's lawyer is attempting to tell this citizen that the bondsman was within his rights to use his weapon, but take into account that the bondsman never identified himself and he shot repeatedly at an unarmed man, and this was over a $600 bond for tickets. I mean, so this is ridiculous, folks. Even thinking that you are within rights to shoot someone over a $600 bond, taking into account, of course, that there is no actual money in circulation. There's only debt notes. It's only fiat currency. And this bondsman actually thinks he is within his rights to shoot an unarmed civilian over a fictitious bond involving money that doesn't actually exist. So it's just incredible, folks. And this is a very good indication of the incredibly impaired mental state of these individuals. I mean, again, let's get real, folks. If the government wants me to pay a bond, I'd say, well, okay, I'm happy to pay the bond upon proof of claim that there is any money backed by anything of value in circulation within this country that I can actually pay it with. Because at the moment, from what I can see, there is no money in circulation. So where do I get the money to pay the bond if the government isn't actually going to issue any real money? Let's get real. And I'll find out a little bit more about this incident and I'll bring you a little bit more information about it on the next show. Actually, over the next couple of shows, I intend to have a lady on by the name of Sue Mains. And I have a video of Sue posted on my website where she's talking about the Brigalow Corporation and the takeover of Queensland. And I also intend to have G. Edward Griffin on within the next couple of weeks, hopefully, to discuss the new film that he's involved in entitled What in the World Are They Spraying? And you'll find a link to that on thecrowhouse.com. You'll also find a link there to the talk that was given by Sue Mains regarding the Brigalow Corporation and the loss of ownership rights in Queensland. I'm actually going to update the website a little bit soon, folks. I'm thinking a colour change would be nice. Of course, it's a bit of a major job, but I'm working on that one, folks. So yes, the Crow House might have a bit of a facelift soon, as long as I can find the time to do so. I have around 540 or 550 pages on the Crow House, so it is a little bit of a mission, but I'm sure I'll get to it at some stage. Now, just to change the subject completely for a minute or two, a little while ago, I believe it might have been last show, I think I mentioned to you that I received as a gift a device made from resin and crystals and copper wire and orgonite that is apparently a resonator device. I received this as a gift. It came in the mail, and I experienced an amazing reconnection in my energy field by being around this thing. I thought it quite amazing, actually, that I would have this effect, such a noticeable effect for myself. I mean, I usually feel quite connected to energy, and I, in particular, noticed the difference this made to me very much. But I'd like to tell you the whole story of what happened with this reconnection, if I may. It's just something that I think I'd like to share with you, because it was actually amazingly synchronistic the way the whole thing happened. Now, I'd done a radio show a few weeks ago where I talked about being disconnected, and I said that it was going to be my last radio show, but I had some synchronicity which led me back to staying on air, and it led me to an understanding of what was sort of going on here with the community around me as well. So it was quite a beneficial meltdown that I had. It was an emotional implosion that I kind of had. But it was quite beneficial, because through it I gained a deeper understanding of what the people around me are experiencing, and I was able to speak to them about certain things that helped them get back on path. And I found that this was also going on all around the world. I received an amazing amount of letters in response to that show from people all around the world who said they'd been going through similar experiences and were very grateful for me providing some type of explanation to what had happened to me, to help them understand it and thus help them get through those sort of situations. So that was very gratifying. So in response to that show, there was a listener in Australia here who wrote an email to me and said, "Max, you're under attack. You need something to protect you." And then a couple of weeks later, I received in the mail this, what she described as a resonator, and with it came 3 orgonite, I suppose you'd just call them pucks. I mean, they kind of look like pucks you'd use in a hockey game. And the way it all happened and where it all went from there was quite amazing, actually, and I'd really like to share it with you. But looking at the time, I think I've started this little tale too late, because it looks like it's about time for a break now. So what I will do is I will leave the story there for now, and I'll come back and I'll talk a little bit more about it after the break. Thank you, as always, for spending this time with me today, and I'll speak to you again in a few minutes. And welcome back, folks. Now, before the break, I was talking about the gift of the orgonite and crystal resonator that was sent to me by a listener, and the effects that I've been experiencing with this device and the synchronicities surrounding the arrival of it. I just find things like synchronicities and the symbolism contained in certain events to be quite significant if you really look at things, folks. I'm not being superstitious or anything, but it's quite interesting when you start reading the signs that the universe provides for you and attempting to interpret these signs. And as I was talking about, I think it was last week as well, I was talking about Dharma and finding that true path in life, essentially discovering and walking the path that you have laid out for yourself, that the universe has laid out for you, your divine path in the cosmic scheme of things. And so, getting back to the story, as I was saying, I had this kind of emotional implosion, which led me to an understanding of what was happening in the community around me. And via that event and the synchronicity surrounding that event, I was able to get that message out to a lot of people around the world who listen to this radio broadcast. So there was therefore a specific reason for that event to have occurred in my life at that particular time. It happened because it needed to happen, because the many people that I get to talk to needed to hear that information. That's the way I look at it anyway. You see, it very much appears to have worked out that way simply because of the amount of emails that I got. So there was a synchronicity involved in that. And then through that event, this resonator device arrived for me in the mail. Now, it arrived the day before my birthday. This is very significant. It arrived the day before my birthday. And I sat it on my desk, and I wrapped my internet cable around it. And the next morning when I woke up, which was my birthday, I sat up in bed, and I just felt completely different. I put my legs on the floor, and I just said, wow, what's changed? Something's changed. Something has really significantly changed in the whole energy field. And I thought, well, what's different? And I looked over at my desk, and I saw the device on my desk, and I went, I guess it's this device. I can't think of anything else that would be doing it because nothing else has changed. And I looked outside, and there was an amazing amount of chemtrails. And usually you find that there's quite an agitated emotional state on days of heavy spraying. So I thought, well, that's amazing. I'm not even feeling the chemtrails. And I literally felt like someone had pushed the reset button on my energy field. I felt like I was completely connected again, and I realized what a struggle it's been over the last few months since I moved to this area. I believe it was January I moved to this area. And I've realized what a struggle it's been to maintain energy while I've been here. And then suddenly this morning, I've woken up on the morning of my birthday, and it's like someone had hit the reset button. And that morning I got a call from Truth Frequency Radio, and they asked me to come on after hours and do a talk with them. We ended up talking for a couple of hours, and I mentioned this resonator device, and I started talking a little bit about Dharma and energy and the path of the heart and all sorts of stuff. And at the end of the show, after explaining to these people how connected I felt, I turned around from my desk, and there on the floor, about 3 feet from my desk, were 2 banded snakes. These are not a very common type of snake in Australia. I mean, reasonably common, but they're not the sort of snakes that you see every day. And 2 of them had come into my cabin here, and they were about 3 feet from my desk on the floor. They had each other held by the back of the neck, and they were twirling and twining and mating on the floor behind my chair. And I was stunned. 2 black and white banded snakes. They look like 3 feet long, thin Christmas socks, you know. And there they are mating on the floor behind me. And I was literally stunned. Now, where I'm living here in this particular section of Australia is very significant land according to Aboriginal legend. It's a very, very significant place. This whole area is considered the birthplace of their race. And this area is different to everywhere else in Australia. The whole Northern Rivers region, the Green Cauldron it's called, it is different to anywhere you've ever been. It's a very, very highly energized place, and it's very significant. So when I see something like 2 banded snakes mating on the floor behind me, on a day that I'm feeling an extremely significant shift in energy, and that also happens to be my birthday, then the first thing, of course, that I'm going to do is look into what the Aboriginal meaning of this is. And then I see that it turns out that the Aboriginal meaning of the snake is fertility, rebirth, and reconnection. And for me, folks, seeing these 2 snakes on the floor behind me, while God knows how long they'd been there, I'd been turned around doing a radio show for 2 hours, and they'd been there long enough to come into the floor and do whatever little mating ritual they do and be in the throes of the act when I turned around. And to me, this was an incredibly spiritual event, and it very much served as confirmation for me that what I was experiencing was a reconnection and a resetting of my energy field. I think that visitations from animals and wildlife can indeed carry specific messages for us if we are prepared to read the messages and listen to the messages.